So it's really Aristotle discovers the secrets of the universe, and then Dante is just there. Hello everyone, and welcome back to my channel. My name is Gabby, and today I have for you my first actual book recommendation video that I've made. And I think the reason I haven't made one of these is because, most book recommendation videos have a theme, and I feel like I haven't read enough books to properly recommend a bunch of them under one particular theme or whatever. But I decided to do this video. What is this video? Well, this is Latinx book recs, and I want to do this video because I kind of hope maybe this will become a series on this channel. As I read more Latinx books, I could recommend more to you because I do want to read more of them. If you didn't already know, I am Cuban, so yeah, book recs. Yes, Hispanic books by Hispanic authors. Yes, this list is not really an exhaustive list because as I was thinking about all of the books I could recommend for this video, I realized that I haven't actually read that many. So this is going to be a list of books that I have read, and then a list of Latinx books that sound really, really cool that I want to read that I also want to share with you. Also, I wanted to do this video because I think this month is Latinx Hispanic Heritage Month, so that's really cool. So what better way to celebrate that? Also, I'm going to do a follow-up video talking specifically about new releases that have recently come out and that are going to come out, so I'm very excited about that. That will be posted next week, hopefully. But okay, so enough introduction, let's just get into the rec. So the first three books that I have here are, technically I only have two books, but the first three books that I'm going to talk about are all Elizabeth Acevedo's books. We're not surprised. No, we're not surprised. No one is surprised at this point, because if you watched me for longer than 2 seconds, you know I love her books. And she's probably my new favorite author of this year. Quick synopses of all these three books. Okay, so first, we have The Poet-X, which is about 15-year-old Xiomara Batista who cares more about writing poetry than she does about worshiping God. And so she goes behind her mother's back to join a slam poetry group and finally find her voice. And then next we have With Fire on High, which follows 17-year-old Imani Santiago, who is forced to try to balance her responsibilities as a teen mom and also her aspirations for the future. Imani also has these really cool magical cooking skills, and so she joins this culinary class at her school. And so with the help of this class and the trips that follows it, she eventually tries to figure out what it is she actually wants to pursue in her life. And then finally we have Clap When You Land, which is two sisters. One lives in New York City, the other lives in the Dominican Republic, and neither one of them knows about the other one's existence. So when their father dies in a tragic plane crash, these two sisters will eventually uncover their father's secrets, which will eventually lead them to each other. Okay. Unfortunately, I do not have The Poet-X with me, which is actually my personal favorite out of these three books. From watching a lot of booktube videos and things, it seems like a lot of people like Clap When You Land the most out of the three. I think that's because this is also written in verse along with The Poet-X, but it's almost a perfect combination of verse and prose, so it's not too overwhelming or confusing for people to read. When they read it, it's enough for them to process. Whereas I know The Poet-X, she really goes in on the verse, which I really love about that, but I guess some people, you know, they don't really like that as much, so this is like more easily digestible, which I understand. This was also a really good book. I rated this is either a 4 or 4.5 star, because my only complaint about this book is that going into it, I thought the sisters would meet sooner than they actually do, but they don't, and so it's a very, very slow build up, and I felt like we could have gotten to like their meeting sooner, and the ramifications after that we could have seen more of, and so it was a little, I don't want to say dragged out, but maybe a little dragged out. But I definitely did really like the climax of the book. I think the build up to that was really done well, and also I really love how it showcases the importance of female bonds and familial bonds in this book, because it's a very female-centric book. So that's what I liked about that. And then with a Fire on High, this is the only Elizabeth Acevedo book so far that's not in verse. This is not in verse, but it still has kind of a similar structure, I think, to the Poet X, just without the verse. I really, really liked it, even though it's about Amani being a teen mom and her taking care of her 2-year-old daughter. Like, it's still a light story. It still feels very light. I think this is probably my least favorite though out of the 3, just because I really liked it, but I feel like it was lacking a real emotional punch. You know, it was light, yeah, it was great, but I don't know, it was just missing something, and I feel like that could be maybe because it didn't have the verse. Yeah, that's partially why I also really love the Poet X, because it has all of the emotional punches. It does not pull any of its punches. It just socks you right in the face, which is why I love it. But yeah, okay, I think that's all I wanted to say as far as those 3 books. The next book that I have is The House on Mango Street by Sandra Cisneros. And The House on Mango Street is about, it's basically about all the people that live on Mango Street, but is specifically told through the point of view of the main character Esperanza, and her family are Mexican immigrants living in the US, and so a lot of the people that live in Mango Street are also immigrants. I don't think all of them are, but so this story is told through a series of vignettes. So the chapters, you don't necessarily even need to read them chronologically. Like, if you want to read them out of order, you could, because each story focuses on a different thing or a different person or family that lives on the street, or in a different story. But we always come back to Esperanza's point of view and how she's thinking and feeling about these things. I mean, we don't necessarily always hear what she's thinking and feeling, but we can guess judging on how the story is being told. And so this covers a lot about, you know, the experience of immigrants living in the US, and racism and poverty and language, like being bilingual, you know, Spanish versus English and all of those things. Oh, fair warning, there's also sexual assault in this book, but this book definitely talks about a lot of different things. There's probably more topics it covers, and I'm just not remembering because it's been about a year since I read it, so, but yeah, it's a really good read. I think the way Sandra Cisneros writes it, it feels very profound. I think she writes it really beautifully, and there's almost a lyrical quality to it, and yeah, almost poetic in a way. And so I would highly recommend this book. Also, it's really short. You could probably read it in a day. The next book that I have is actually not a book or a novel, but it's a play. Why am I recommending a play? Well, I figured this list needs more variety, and it's a play that I've read. It's a play that I liked. I actually chose to read this for a final paper for a theater class I was taking, and I thought it'd be nice to recommend, you know, something different. But that play is Real Women Have Curves by Josefina Lopez. And basically what this play is about is all of these women, it takes place in this small sewing factory where all of these women are working, and all of the women in this story are immigrants, or they're part of immigrant families. Some of them are citizens, some of them are not citizens, and so they're all working in this small sewing factory, and they're trying to meet this deadline. Basically, they have to make a certain amount of dresses by the end of the week in order to get paid on some order or something. And they really need the money for some reason. I don't know. But basically, they have to meet this deadline. And so while they're in this factory all week, you know, trying to get these dresses done, they end up talking with each other about themselves and, you know, their lives, their love lives, their past, their beliefs, their bodies, all of these different things. And it's really interesting because all these women, well, there's a generational aspect to this play, because there's, you know, some are really young, some are really old, and so we get to see how their opinions or beliefs differ, and through talking with one another, they learn things from each other. And it's just a really nice story. It's also funny. I think the character that's the main character, I think is, you know, this girl who's like 18, and so she's a writer, and she's really feminist, and so some of the things she says to the older women, or just like the other women in general, is really scandalous. Or they think it's really scandalous, and it's just really funny. It's just really funny. It's light, it's funny, it's great. Oh, and there's also a lot of positivity around your body and talking about, you know, being able to be comfortable in your body and all that stuff, and your appearance and yada yada yada. And I think there's a character in here that has an eating disorder or eating problems, so be wary of that going into it. But overall, it's a really light, funny story. So there you go. The next book that I have is a book that is really, really popular, so there's a good chance you've already read this book. But if you haven't read this book, this is me telling you, hey, read it. It's good. It's good, I swear. But the next book I have is Aristotle and Dante Discover the Secrets of the Universe by Benjamin Alire Sans. And this book is basically about this 15-year-old boy, Aristotle, living in the 80s in El Paso, and one day he meets this other boy, Dante, and then his whole life just changes from there. And I really, really liked it. It's a very good story. It's basically about Ari trying to figure out who he is, like, and trying to figure out the world around him and stuff, which is kind of why it says, you know, Aristotle and Dante discover the secrets of the universe, because it's like Ari is discovering, you know, the secrets about himself and about everyone around him. So it's really Aristotle discovers the secrets of the universe, and then Dante is just there. I really like this because even though I was 19, so I was a 19-year-old in 2019 reading this book, and I could still connect with Ari's character, even though he lives in a different decade, different age, different gender, but I could still relate. Because I think what Sans does really well in this book, he talks about sort of this phenomenon that I feel like everyone experiences growing up, where you sort of realize things about your parents and your perceptions of them change, because either assumptions you had of them before just completely turn out to be wrong, or because you're older you begin to understand things that you didn't understand when you were younger, and so it all like what they do starts to make a lot more sense. And I just really like that, because I feel like that's something everyone goes through, but you know, that sort of that sort of journey of Ari like discovering things about his parents is like, that's not just limited to his parents. Like Ari discovers things about literally everything. Like he's realizing things about his parents, about himself, who he is, about his family in general, about things that happened in the past. And it really feels like this whole book, Ari is going through his journey like just in the dark, and then everything around him is just like barely out of his scope of understanding. And then slowly as the book goes on, like the darkness begins to go away and everything in front of him just gains a whole new clarity. And I thought Sans writes that really well. I thought he did a really good job of doing that. And I think the last thing I want to say about this book is just I really liked the writing, because something about his writing just felt so familiar to me, almost as if I had read this before, or I read something like it before, but I hadn't read it before, and I've never read any of his books before. So I was like, why does this writing feel familiar? I don't know, but it felt familiar, and so it almost felt kind of cozy reading this, because I'm like, yeah, I feel like I know this, even though I'd never read the story before. It's really strange, but yeah. The next book I have is actually a classic. I think you would consider it a classic. I think if you live in Latin America, I feel like there's probably a good chance that you've either one, read this book, or two, have read a book by the same author. I actually read this book as the English translation in high school, and that is A Chronicle of a Death Foretold by Gabriel Garcia Marquez. And so what this book is about, so it has a very interesting and strange premise. It's really strange because it takes place in this town in Colombia where this guy, Santiago, gets murdered. But the thing about his murder is everyone knows he's going to get murdered, but no one does anything about it. Like, there's these two brothers that go around town basically telling everyone that they're going to kill Santiago, but no one does anything. And it's either because, people don't take the brothers that seriously, or they think, oh, well, someone else will probably warn Santiago, or, oh, well, someone probably already warned Santiago, so I shouldn't worry, nothing bad's gonna happen. It's really strange how this happens, because you think to yourself, how is it that a murder that everyone knows is going to happen still ends up happening anyway? And it's almost like the bystander effect, where like a bunch of people see something happening, but no one does anything because everyone just puts off the responsibility on everyone else around them. And so because everyone does that, no one actually does anything to stop the thing that's happening. So it's just really weird. It's just really weird. So I guess if you like psychology or weird things like that, like trying to understand why no one bothered to warn this guy, this would be a good book for you. Plus it's really short, and it's also not told in chronological order. Like, it goes back and forth in the time period to cover like different aspects of the murder. So like one chapter is explaining why they want to kill Santiago. One chapter narrates what happens after he's murdered and after the brothers get arrested. And it's just like, it's really weird. It's really weird, but I also kind of liked it. I don't know. I remember liking it, reading it, because I was like, this is kind of weird, but it's an interesting kind of weird, And the last book that I have on this list that I have actually personally read, I don't have the physical copy, but that is This Train is Being Held by Ismay Williams. And oh my gosh, I did not expect to love this book, but I loved it. And I did talk about it in a couple of my other videos if you've seen them. But basically what this book is about is, it's about a Cuban girl and a Dominican boy living on opposite sides of New York City, but their paths cross when they keep seeing each other on the subway, and so a romance ensues between them. But personal problems in their own lives threaten to keep the two lovebirds apart. And it was good. It was good. I feel like part of me is like, it really wasn't that good, but for some reason, when I listened to it, because I listened to it on audiobook, I was like, oh my god, this is so good. I think the audiobook is part of the reason why it felt so entertaining, because like, I don't know, it's just a different experience where someone's like telling you the story like as it's happening in your ear than you just reading it. I don't know, I feel like it's different because I just kept wanting to keep listening to it. And I actually stayed up one night until like 4 a.m. just so I could listen to the rest of the audiobook. So that tells you how good it was. But I just really liked it because it made me laugh and cry and feel all the feelings, and it was funny and it was just great. The romance in it I thought was just so cute, so lovely. Isabel and Alex, they are adorable. They are sweet, they are cute. I love it. I ship it. It's great. It's a great fun time. I also really like the writing. I thought the writing was really pretty. And if you want to hear more of my thoughts about this particular book, I go in depth, not really in depth, but I talk at length in my July wrap-up about this train is being held, if you're interested. But yeah, I would highly recommend it. So there are also literally a ton of other Latinx books that sound really, really cool that I want to read, and I just haven't had a chance to because I was actually going to do the Latinx readathon in August, but I was in a reading slump, so I didn't read anything in August. So I completely flunked that, but I still want to tell you like about all the different books that I want to read. Some of them you might have heard of, some of them you might not have heard of. So I'm just going to rapidly like go through a list of books and give you like just a little splash of a synopsis so you could see why it's cool and why you should read it and why I should read it. So the first book is We Set the Dark on Fire by Taylor K. Mejia. The book is set on an island where husbands get 2 wives, but these 2 wives in this story say fuck the patriarchy by falling in love with each other. Sabrina and Corina by Kahi Maharto Anstein, and this is a short story collection about indigenous Latinas living in Colorado. Mexican Gothic by Silvia Moreno Garcia. After Noemi gets a mysterious letter from her cousin, she travels to the haunted mansion where her and her husband live, only to uncover some horrific surprises. Also, something about mushrooms. Gods of Jade and Shadow by Silvia Moreno Garcia. A fantastical road trip through Mexico with the Mayan god of death? Sign me up. That sounds so cool. Also, you see this cover? Beautiful. Beautiful cover. Do you see it? It's literally so Someone get it for me. Please. Incendiary by Zoraida Cordova. The fate of the kingdom rests in the hands of a girl with the power to steal memories when she is forced to go undercover in the very palace where her former captors used her as a weapon of mass destruction. Labyrinth Lost by Zoraida Cordova. A girl from a family of brujas accidentally opens a portal and adventure ensues from there. Next Year in Havana by Chanel Clayton is about a Cuban-American woman who goes to Havana to spread her grandmother's ashes, but is forced to confront her Cuban roots and her Cuban history while she is there. Beneath the Citadel by Destiny Surya. A diverse ragtag group of misfits plan to infiltrate the Citadel in order to revive a dead rebellion. But the only problem is fate might not exactly be on their side. And finally, Almost Human by Ari North, which is a soft, sapphic romance graphic novel that takes place in a futuristic world where most people have body modifications. And this graphic novel is free to read on Webtoon. And that is all of the books that I have for you, that I am recommending to you, and yeah. I'm really excited. I hope this becomes a series and that I read more in the future. And oh, just as a quick note at the end of this video, I think I'm changing my upload schedule to Fridays from now on. I'm going to try to make this a set thing, so expect a new video next Friday, because the day you're seeing this, it should be Friday. Unless you're not watching the day I posted it, then it's not Friday. What am I saying? The point is, if you like this video, leave a like. And if you like seeing my beautiful, chaotic mess, then you should definitely subscribe. And also, I'm doing a thing now where for each like 50 milestone I reach, so the next one will be when I reach 150 subscribers, on my Twitter I will share a clip of me singing. So added incentive for you to subscribe. And that is all I have for you today. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see y'all next time. Bye! I swear it's good. Scout's honor. Oh, I don't know why I said Scout's honor. I'm not even a scout. What? That's so random. Yeah. Mexican Gothic by Sylvia Garcia. Fuck. Gods and Jade of Mexican Gothic by Sylvia. Gods and Jade of Shadow by Gods and Jade of What? How do I do outros again?